Hello my kings and queens, and welcome to another episode of transformational thoughts that help us to become the unlimited souls that we are meant to be. Listen guys, when you are doing something new and you are on edge, sometimes you go through like all sorts of emotions, from I got this to oh, I don't know what I'm doing, oh, I'm so intimidated. And that's exactly what I went through, because I've been struggling with some of the topics that I had planned out for our sessions. Let me tell you the truth. Some of them have really been intimidating, where I felt like, it's a bit too deep. I don't know how to unpack it. And that's the reason why I've sort of taken long to come with another topic. But everything's a work in progress. The whole point is to not stop. That's the biggest thing. So whatever it is that you're doing, don't stop. That is the biggest thing, okay? Now, before we get into it, guys, are you subscribing? Have you hit the like button? Have you shared this with someone? Or what? You don't believe this thing is going to help people? Anyway, alright, so my topic for today is comfort zones. So, what are comfort zones? We're going to be dealing with 3 questions. What is a comfort zone, and how do we get out, and why should we get out? Okay, so we've all heard the phrase that all growth starts at the end of our comfort zone, or it's a whole new world outside of our comfort zone, blah blah blah. We all know those things, right? But the question is, why should we get out? What exactly is a comfort zone? And more importantly, how do we get out? And I remember growing up, I used to wonder why people would often say, you need to get out of your comfort zone. And I was a kid, so for me, in my mind, a comfort zone was, I'd picture someone sitting at home in their PJs and their fluffy slippers, and they're sitting there with the blanket, all curled up on the couch with a nice cup of hot chocolate or hot cocoa, watching their favorite program on TV. And then the wind will be just icy wind whistling outside, like that whole typical movie scene, or when you open a book, a novel, and then that's like the first scene or something like that. So for me, that's how my brain worked, and I did not understand for the life of me, why would you want to leave a comfortable zone and go into the icy cold? For what? For the who? To grow? No, let's grow inside. Let's grow in here, But of course, then you grow up and then you realize that, not so much. It's actually something completely different. So let's start with the first question. Number 1. What is a comfort zone? So, a comfort zone is defined as a place or situation where you feel at ease. A settled method of working that requires little effort and yields only barely acceptable results. One writer says that it is a state of mind where a person's anxiety or vulnerability are minimized to manageable levels. So it's basically that area in your life where you feel so familiar that you don't necessarily have to apply yourself. So let's look at an example of you remember when you first learned how to drive and you were just on edge? Some of us were here. Change. But obviously not everyone is here, but trust me, you probably were internally. So please, okay? And the thing is, where driving was such a task where you literally had to apply yourself, you had to concentrate. Hey, some of us had to even switch off the music because that's how much you needed to concentrate, But you had to make a mental note. Before I change lanes or whatever, I need to check my blind spots, all of that stuff. I need to indicate, all of that. And then as time went on and you just, grow comfortable in it, everything becomes second nature. It now just happens so naturally that sometimes you don't even remember that you switched on your indicators, but you actually did. And then you hear things where people are like, I don't even remember the drive back home, but they got home safely, because their brains have now switched to autopilot, because those tasks have become second nature to them. And that's exactly the same thing with a comfort zone, is that you're no longer applying yourself. You're so comfortable that everything is like just second nature. That's a comfort zone. So, question number 2. Why should I step out? Okay, so let's first start here. I believe that a comfort zone doesn't mean that you are always happy. You might be, you might not be. But let's look at 2 examples where someone is in a comfort zone because they are... don't you just love South Africa and Hardy does? Anyway, someone could be working and they're not happy with their salary, but they know how to make it work. It's predictable for them, right? The other one could be that someone is getting paid well. They have a nice, comfortable salary, but they're not fulfilled. They're not... the position they're in doesn't really spark any passion in them anymore. But they stay because the salary has afforded them a lifestyle that makes them comfortable and they know what to expect. So they, rather than going and trying something new, which they don't know how it's going to work. So that's the first thing that we need to get into our minds, is that comfort zones doesn't necessarily mean that you're always happy in that space. It's just a space that's predictable and you know what to expect and it's familiar, and so it means that you're not putting in a lot of effort into it, right? So that is the reason why we need to get out, is because you're not applying yourself, and so your growth is stunted. It means that you're not using your, or you're not reaching your full potential. And another reason why we should also step out of our comfort zones is because when you are not applying yourself, or rather when you are in an uncomfortable space, because that's what it is, you are in an uncomfortable zone. When you're in unfamiliar territory, guess what happens most of the times? We apply ourselves, we concentrate, we're alert, we do extra research, we are always learning, we're always open to learning. So, and when we do that, we also get reacquainted with ourselves. Some of the things that we might not necessarily have applied when we were in our comfortable space, or we were not maximizing in our comfortable space because already that was familiar territory, so we didn't have to do much. So when you are in unfamiliar territory, it means that you're learning more, so you get to maximize on your strengths. But you also get to confront your weaknesses that maybe you were not even paying attention to, but now there's a spotlight on them. And then you learn how to deal with them, and you learn how to get the best out of you. And that ignites passion when you're doing something new. And you might agree with this, you might not agree with this, but for me, I believe that life does not always give us what we deserve. Life only gives us what we are willing to negotiate for and what we're willing to fight for. And sometimes when we don't step out and we remain in comfortable spaces where we might actually be thriving and doing well and we are comfortable with it, but then other people that we might perceive as less talented, as less skilled, maybe less educated, less whatever, they might actually overtake us because they are constantly stretching themselves and they're constantly in a space where they're willing to learn and they're willing to grow and they're willing to be stretched, and so they keep improving while we remain the same. So I hope that is enough for you to want to step out of a comfort zone, or to even assess where exactly in your life have you grown so comfortable that you don't have to put in any efforts, right? Now, third question is, how do we step out? I'd say the best way is to start small and to be consistent. So we're not asking you to quit your job just yet. It could just be as simple as doing something on a weekend or after hours. Just that alone, you doing something new already can start putting you on edge You'll start researching a bit more. Maybe the whole process of finding out how to register a company, how to do certain things, and just that alone can ignite a passion in you. And it doesn't even have to be about registering a company or doing something on the side. It could literally be that maybe you're stuck in a rut, or anything of that sort. And the whole point is to literally start small. So it could be switching up your daily routine, doing something new. Because remember, comfort zones is about you not applying yourself. It's you being in familiar spaces. So when you are switching up your daily routine, then it means that you have to think, because usually at this time this is what you do, at this time this is what you do. So now you switched it up a bit, so it means that you have to kind of think a little. It could be you going to a place that is unfamiliar, or a place that you might not likely to visit because it's kind of not you. We're not asking you to put yourself in harm's way, okay? But just something that's where you would not normally go to. And just, being in that space. So the whole point of these small exercises is you are literally training your brain that it is okay to be in an unfamiliar space. That's literally what it is. Sometimes it could be that you want to step out of your comfort zone because you are trying to confront your fears. So if that's the case, then I would suggest that you do the trigger challenge exercise. So here's an example. Someone is afraid of talking to girls. So then it means that they have to make a mental note that, okay, so I'm afraid of talking to girls. So it means that the next time I see a girl that I know I would normally like to talk to, but because I'm uncomfortable with that, I'm not going to do it, I'm just going to ignore them, then what I'll do is I will, whenever I see that girl, that should be the trigger in my mind to go and talk to her, or to go and say hi. Doesn't have to be a lot. Could be passing by. You could be at Starbucks and then you just pass by and you just say hi. That's it. We're not asking you to go marry strangers and marriage proposal and stuff like that. So that could literally be it. So the girl is the trigger, and then the saying hi is the challenge. So let's look at another one. You're shy. You know that you're not much of a talker in groups or at work when you're in meetings, but you've got stuff that you want to say that you feel is valuable. So then the trigger could be is that next time I'm in a meeting, next time I'm in a group setting, that's the trigger. So you're training your brain to recognize those places where you normally shy away from. So that's the trigger. And then the challenge is one sentence. Just one yarn, and just hold it in, just it doesn't have to be a lot. We're not asking you to now take over the meeting here, but just the whole point is start small, but be consistent. Start small, but be consistent. So do it often enough, and then that way your brain is going to get used to the idea that it is okay to be in unfamiliar territory. And soon you will be taking on bigger challenges and facing bigger things, which will lead to you obviously growing, because the bigger the challenges that we take, the more we're stretched and the more we grow, right? And obviously the more we grow, the bigger results we get out of life. Okay, right. Now, at this point, I could literally say, oh, thank you guys for watching. That's all we have. We've covered the 3 questions. What is a comfort zone? Why should we get out, and how should we get out, right? And that would be okay. But for me, as I was doing the research on this, I found myself being challenged by certain things. So when I was doing my research on this, is that most of the times what you find on the internet is that comfort zones have to do mostly with work environments or social spaces. And maybe you might not agree with this, but being someone who's so passionate about transformation and growth and self-development, I started to ask myself whether comfort zones could not also apply to our thinking patterns, the way we think, the way we view life, our certain attitudes, certain mindsets. that we've come to conclude that this is me, this is who I am. So when we're holding on to thinking patterns and mindsets that don't serve us, and instead of challenging them, we mask them. So it means that we could be nursing feelings of insecurity, feelings of constantly feeling inadequate, feeling small, an inferiority complex. So all of these negative things that we don't deal with, we've come to conclude that this is who we are, but we don't want the world to know that this is who we are. And so we mask them, and we mask our insecurities or feelings of, or our insecurity issues. And we mask it with fake confidence, an inferiority complex. When we mask it, could actually manifest as a superiority complex, because it is an issue that is not dealt with. So instead of dealing with these, confronting them, being honest with ourselves so that we can uproot them, we hide them. We make excuses around them because now we've grown comfortable with them and we don't want to deal with them. So that bad temper that is affecting your relationships that you have not dealt with, that stinking bad attitude that you expect everyone to accept that it's you, and that's all you keep saying, well, this is who I am, well, you just need to accept me for who I am. How is that working for you? How's that working for your relationships? Or the one that I've also come to realize, where people say things like, hey, mina ngithanda nje ukukhuluma, I don't want confrontation. If you don't want confrontation, go live on the moon. Because as long as human beings, there will be some level of confrontation. And we're not asking you to go and pick fights with people. But sometimes it means that you're going to have to confront or sit with other human beings and discuss serious issues, instead of running away from them and hiding behind the fact that when you don't like confrontation. Hey, Bo, listen, I was watching a TV show the other day where there was a mom who had siblings that were embroiled in a legal battle. And she was crying, she was having heart conditions, and you could see this thing was breaking her. But even though it was breaking her, all she kept saying is, I don't like confrontation. So what that meant was, she could not sit the children that she birthed and raised and bring them together in one room to say, what exactly is the issue? Can we sort it out? Can we speak as a family? All she kept saying to the one child was, I just don't like confrontation, because the other child was saying, we're going to have to address this. And she just kept crying and saying, I don't like confrontation. And to me that didn't make sense, because it was affecting her heart. Her family was falling apart. Her children were in loggerheads. All because she was nursing a complex about her that she's come to accept that this is who she is. So she would rather stay in that space rather than to get out of her comfort zone and deal with the issue. So she literally could not get over herself. Instead, she was hiding behind this thing that she doesn't like confrontation. And so she's not going to deal with this. It's not making sense because, and I'm not being judgmental, I think that there's a lot of things that we've learned to mask, we've learned to hide under the carpet and conclude that this is who we are instead of dealing with them. And the problem for me is that, like I mentioned earlier, is that the world does not give us what we deserve, but it gives us what we are willing to negotiate or fight for. And so when there's certain mindsets and attitudes about ourselves that we don't deal with, then we begin to see patterns coming up because the world gives us who we are. And so then we don't understand why the same experiences keep creeping up. It's because in us there is a certain issue or certain mindset, because that's what we attract and that's what we keep experiencing. And that's the reason why it's important that we deal with these things. It's no different from someone who has hurt their ankle, and I've been there. Don't ask me what was happening, but I've hurt my ankle before. And you have to walk around with crutches. Now crutches, if you've been there, you know they're uncomfortable. You know there's certain things you can't do. Ladies, you know you can't wear your heels. You can't really... even going hiking can be a problem, or taking a walk, or getting on the dance floor, you know. So it limits you from doing a lot of things. And so during that process, it's important that you go for physiotherapy. And if you've been for physio, you know that sometimes it's not exactly a nice experience. It can be painful, man, you know, but it is necessary so that you are able to fully heal and be able to stand on your own and do the things that you would not have normally been able to do. So it gives you that freedom, but it means that you have to confront it. You have to do things that are uncomfortable, which is physiotherapy. But instead, when we don't deal with these mindsets and these attitudes that are affecting us, we are essentially taking those crutches and we keep telling the world that this is who I am. I walk around in crutches. And we decorate the crutch, and those crutches either become excuses or they become things that we nurse and we hide behind. And we conclude that this is who I am. But that's the thing. It's not who you are. It is that mindset, that attitude, that bad temper, that you not wanting confrontation, that inferiority complex, those trust issues, that lack of confidence, all of those things are not you. Those are the things that were planted in you, and how they grow and develop into personality traits or complexes about ourselves is because they were repeated often enough. Most of these things, we develop them from our childhood, where we either witnessed certain experiences repeating themselves over and over, or we kept hearing the same things. So someone was saying something to us over and over that may have been negative, or we kept seeing things, or we kept doing things over and over, and they became complexes. They became these mindsets that were now engraved in us. But because they were planted, they can also be uprooted. Because as I mentioned, is that when who we are, because we are energy, we are vibrations, how we vibrate, the universe responds that way. And so if you're vibrating at a certain frequency, that's what you attract. And so if there's things that you've not dealt with and you are vibrating negatively, guess what? Those are the cycles and the patterns that you keep seeing. So it's important that we address these things. And the question is, how then do we address it? It's literally the first thing to do, and it sounds crazy, but it's literally changing your mind about yourself. By first saying that this is not me. This bad temper is not me. This I'm constantly negative, or I'm pessimistic, or I'm lazy. It's not me. I first need to change my mind about me. And then secondly is to then train your mind to not react to this certain stimulus the same way that you normally would, because now that you've changed your mind and you've said that this is not me, so therefore I'm not going to behave or react the way that I normally did, because this is not me. So now you've also now identified what the problem is, and you've made a decision to confront it. And when you confront it, then you uproot it, and then you plant something positive in its place. Because sometimes what we do is we do recognize that I don't like this about myself, but instead of dealing with it and confronting it because we don't know how to deal with it, then we sweep it under the carpet, we ignore it, we mask it with fake confidence, we mask it with certain things that are not necessarily true. And the problem with that is it keeps piling up under the carpet, and at some point it is going to come up. And unfortunately, because it's not dealt with and it's not uprooted, it means it's still somewhere in there in us. And then that's why the world still responds to us and gives us these patterns, because we have not dealt with these things. We've not uprooted them from its core. So let's make a simple example of how we can uproot these things. Let's look at someone who is struggling with either feeling inadequate or feeling small, and they shrink in group settings. When you are in that space, you have to, because we normally feel it brewing, we feel it coming up, you can feel yourself shrinking. So if it's sometimes like a bad temper, someone is frustrating you, you can feel your blood boiling, and until it gets to that point where you just let it out. So if it's about you shrinking in small spaces, you're going to have to learn to have conversations with yourself, because that's how you call it out. Don't ignore it. Have that healthy conversation with yourself, but not out loud. Nah, we don't want people thinking that there's something wrong with you, even though we all know that having conversations with ourselves is healthy, but you have to do it internally, okay? But have those conversations. As tedious as it sounds, it may sound like it's an exercise, but eventually it does become easier. So when you're starting to shrink, why am I shrinking? Why am I feeling small? Why am I feeling this way? Did someone say something? Did someone do something that I perceived that it was making me feel small? I perceived it as them telling me in subtle ways that I am smaller than them. Because chances are nobody said anything. People were just being themselves, but you perceived it in some way. Or it could be that they actually did do something that was subtle because that's just who they are, because we're also dealing with other people with their own issues. But the question then is, how do you respond? So let's say, yes, they did make you feel small, and they intentionally made you feel small. So what's your response? Are you just going to internalize it? What do you believe about yourself? When you changed your mind, what exactly do you believe about yourself? Well, I believe that I am a kind human being. I am intelligent. I am beautiful. And I have a lot to offer. So whether they perceive me as small, or maybe less skilled, or less educated, or, you know, financially less than they are in terms of their status, but I know that I have a lot to offer because I'm intelligent. I am this, I am that. So now what you've done is you've had the conversation, you've called this thing out, you've had a conversation with it, and then you've uprooted it, and you didn't leave that space void. Instead, you're planting other beautiful seeds of who you believe you are, and you keep watering them. It will seem like a tedious exercise because you're going to have to do it often enough every time you feel that thing building up inside of you. And you have to stop yourself in your tracks, have that mental conversation so that you can uproot it and place things. But soon enough, I promise you, it does become second nature. Just like when you're learning to drive, or you had your driving instructor telling you, Shinjaki, Senator. So I don't know if you've had, so one of my friends, and I'm going off topic, so one of my friends, she was telling us like years ago, and she used to learn how to drive. There was a Zulu, who was always teaching how to drive, and every time we tell her to hit the accelerator, we'd be like, Senator, you know. So that could be it as well for you. Is it's going to feel like a tedious exercise, and sometimes you feel like there's a lot of pressure, or you feel like you're not getting it right, or it's a lot of work. But it does get easier, and it does get to a point where it comes naturally, because now you've learned to confront and uproot and plant. And the reason why you have to make a mental note to do that is because you are teaching your brain that, because most of the things that we don't do them at a conscious level most of the times, because remember, our brains have been on autopilot and we've been this way for the longest time. And so it's not like someone will go out of their way to wake up in the morning to have a bad attitude and to just go telling people, you know, when to get off or flipping tables because they've got a bad temper. Most of the times people don't wake up and say, oh, I'm gonna be malicious, oh, I'm so gonna be shy, oh my gosh, I can't wait to wake up and just shrink in front of people. I don't think that's how we are, but it does happen. And when it happens, we're not even aware. Sometimes we wake up and we're right in the middle of it, and you don't even realize how you got to this point where you're feeling so small, or you've lashed out at someone, or whatever the case is. And so when we pause and we confront it and we uproot it and we plant something, we are being intentional. And when we're being intentional, what happens is we're teaching our brains to recognize this thing, because our brains have been on autopilot. So we're teaching them to recognize this thing and uproot it. And eventually it's going to happen like second nature. And then it's going to create, because when we're learning new things, we're creating new neurological pathways in our minds. And then eventually it's just going to become who you are, which is a new person. So I do hope that we get to confront things about ourselves that are uncomfortable, that we get into that habit of introspection, because as I mentioned, that the world doesn't give us who we are. Oh, the world doesn't give us what we deserve, it gives us who we are. And when we want to change our external environment, we always have to start with within. So we always have to start with our mindsets. And that means that we constantly have to put in the work internally. And then we'll begin to see things happen outside. So I do wish you all the best, and if you feel that there's any portion of this that really made a difference to you, that you share it with someone, that you have these conversations, even if you don't fully agree with everything, but share it and have these conversations with other people. What do you think? Have you thought about it this way? And if you really do like it, then hey, come on now, subscribe, hit the like button, come on, you know, your girl's up in here, you know, and she's just passionate about what she's doing. So I do hope that you guys are helping us grow, because guess what, I have a team now. Yay! You know, we're growing, we're gonna get there. But please support us, and just give us that thing, man. What, you know what, we're on the right track, we're doing something, you know. Yeah, just help us with that, you know. But other than that, I do wish you all the best. I hope that you will put in the comments below to say that, listen, you know what, this is what I dealt with, this is what I conquered. So let's make other people know that the work that you put in does benefit in the end. So if you've dealt with anything that was negative, that you've overcome, come on, leave it in the comments below. Let us know. Let's be open, let's be vulnerable, and let's help each other grow, because this is what it's all about. This is what the Unlimited Soul Tribe is all about. We are unlimited in our thinking, we are unlimited in our doing, and the world is our oyster, because we have the mindset that we are unlimited and nothing is impossible for us. So happy growing, happy learning, happy transformation. I love you, and from myself and my team, God bless.